Live from the Sky News Centre, this is Sky News with Anna Botti.
Hello there, good evening. Our top story at 6, Cameron's EU turn. The Conservatives have abandoned their promise to hold a referendum on the Lisbon Treaty, despite a cast-iron guarantee given by the Tory leader 2 years ago. It comes after the Czech president today signed the deal into law, meaning all member states have now ratified the treaty.
Now that the treaty is going to become European law and is going to enter into force, that means that a referendum can no longer prevent the creation of the President of the European Council, the loss of British national vetoes. These things will already have happened, and a referendum cannot unwind them or prevent them. And that means that our campaign for a referendum on the Lisbon Treaty therefore comes to an end today. We think that is a bad day for democracy. The British people have never been consulted.
Well, live in Westminster is our political editor, Adam Bolton. Finally, we get an answer. We've been wondering since the Irish ratified this. What will this mean for David Cameron, Adam, who gave a cast-iron guarantee a couple of years ago?
Well, to be fair to David Cameron, he's always made it clear that the referendum was contingent on it being able to stop the Lisbon Treaty if it voted no. Obviously, now the Lisbon Treaty is going to come into law within weeks. That simply isn't going to happen. So David Cameron tomorrow is going to give a speech spelling out his policy, and it really is a make-or-break day for him because this policy of a referendum has kept the Tory party united. From Kenneth Clarke to Bill Cash, they were able to support it. Now the pro-Europeans will be pleased that there's going to be a policy moving ahead, but the majority of Conservatives, active Conservatives, are Eurosceptic. They would like the chance of a vote on Europe, even if it was on more basic questions of Britain in or out. They're clearly not going to get that, but David Cameron has to appease them without coming up with a policy that will become the centrepiece of his campaign in the general election, swamping other issues, and could potentially swamp his prime ministership if he wins that election and alienate the French and the Germans and others. So he's got quite a test ahead of him.
Adam, stay there if you don't mind. Let's bring in one of those Eurosceptics you were talking about. Conservative MP Bill Cash joins me live now. This was the only decision the leadership could come to, wasn't it?
Well, I don't agree, actually, and for this reason, I think he's been very badly advised. What I would say is that when I hear that the promise of a referendum was only on the treaty and not on the position when it came into law, I'd simply remind people that, in fact, the referendum in 1975 was actually on the basis of what was then the law, so I don't think that quite stacks up. And the other thing is that when we actually voted on a three-line whip, as I recall, during the course of the Lisbon Treaty proceedings on the bill, we voted for a referendum on the bill as it would be enacted, so then it would have been in law as well. So I don't think it's very easy to draw a distinction. In fact, I'm afraid I couldn't agree that there is a distinction at all in practice between saying that it would be a treaty on the one hand and a law on the other, because
the problem is you cannot have a referendum on a law that has already come to pass. What would you do? Would you eject the new EU president from their plush offices? Would you sack the High Representative? You've got to be realistic about this.
No, not at all. The fact is that we wouldn't be talking about the position in its application to the other member states as such. We'd be talking about the effect of this treaty as it was implemented in English law for the purposes of the voters in this country. Remember that in 1975 we did have a referendum. There are about two-thirds of the voters today have never had a chance, despite all the accumulated powers that have been accumulated. Vast changes have been made through Maastricht right the way through, and the people have never had a chance to have their say. All I'm saying, and I have asked David Cameron if he'd be good enough to reconsider this matter, because I think he's been badly advised.
So you still want a referendum then?
Yes, I think that the reason why is that a referendum at least gives people the chance to exercise their democratic choice to decide as to which way they want to go on this matter. And I think that's the fundamental question.
The difficulty for David Cameron, if he wins the next election, he would alienate the leadership of European countries. How would he face President Sarkozy going to Paris on an issue like this? It would be embarrassing for him.
Well, I don't think it's our national interests on a matter of this scale. You've got to remember that the Conservative Party fought this treaty tooth and nail right the way through the House of Commons, and I put down about 200 amendments, and actually we achieved massive unity in the party on the whole question all the way through. And the bottom line is that I don't think that a matter of vital national interests of this kind, particularly if you remember that Tony Blair said that he was going to give a referendum on what was effectively the same treaty and broke his promise, that actually I would regard embarrassing President Sarkozy as being a matter of enormous importance in that context. We're talking about...
Is this the face of the modern Conservative Party? You know, Europe bashing is old news for the Tories. Move on.
No, not at all. We're talking about a very simple question. 80% plus of the British people have wanted a referendum, have demanded a referendum in repeated opinion polls on this question of this treaty and our relationship with Europe. And it affects immigration, it affects our fisheries policy, our common agricultural policy, it affects our monetary policy, it affects our banking policy. Every single thing that you can think of has been dominated by majority voting in the European Union. So it's not just a technical question, it's actually about how the British people conduct their daily lives. And I think that's something very, very important. I hope that David Cameron will reconsider, and I'm not personally going to do more at this stage, as I've written to him, asking him to reconsider. And I think one other thing is I congratulate him on the fact that he's asserted the supremacy of Parliament in 2 separate amendments that I put forward, despite the European Communities Act. So the principle is there, and also our withdrawal from the European People's Party. So I greatly applaud him for that, but I think he's been very badly advised, and the reasons that have been given regarding the fact that it's in law just don't stack up for the reasons I've given already about the referendum in 1975 and our voting in the proceedings on the Lisbon Treaty calling for a referendum even if the bill had been enacted.
Bill Cash, appreciate your time. Thanks very much
Thank
indeed.
you very
Let's return
much.
to our political editor, Adam Bolton. We talked about the cast iron guarantee. He was talking to The Sun back in September 2007. His words were, "Today I will give this cast iron guarantee." This is David Cameron. "If I become PM, a Conservative government will hold a referendum on any EU treaty that emerges from these negotiations. No treaty should be ratified without consulting the British people in a referendum." Will there be many in the Conservative Party, Adam, who believe, like Bill Cash, that David Cameron has been poorly advised on this issue?
Well, we've already heard some members of the European Parliament, again, overwhelmingly Eurosceptics, saying they still think there's a case for a referendum. And of course, Mr Cameron does have to look over his shoulder at potential defectors, amongst the voters at least, to parties like the UK Independence Party or the British National Party. So certainly he's got to consider them. But we do have to remember that when Bill Cash compares this to the vote in 1975, that vote was Britain in or out, and that is a lot further than David Cameron or indeed William Hague want to go. They are firmly of the opinion that Britain's position is as a member of the European Union, and they don't see any need to put that to the vote again.
Adam Bolton, live in Westminster. Thank you.